human brain to speak up in one common language. Adjudicating with me, Kayusran and Ija. Without further ado, I'd like to invite the first speaker of government team, time is yours. Oh yeah, guys, don't forget to time up yourself and tell your POI preference. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Take your time.
Just setting up. Check, am I audible?
Very.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, then.
But if you don't mind, can you speak a bit louder?
Oh, sure. Is this enough?
Cool.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Beginning my speech in three, two, one. Member of the House, we live in a world, in a modern society where people can actually travel to many places with ease, right? Where many people can, with different races, with different nations, can come together, and we believe the idea of many languages will create a problem, and that is why we are very proud to propose this motion. Our goal here is very clear: is that we want to is the communication and also erase the racism that is happening in the status quo, right? Because we believe that language is the most essential thing to being a human being. Because technically, human being is a social people, right? They need to communicate so that they can be able to live with another person. And humans cannot live alone; they must be dependent to someone else, right? Now moving a few clarifications, right? First, that we will apply this mechanism towards all human beings, no matter who they are or from what race they are. And second, we will use a common language, and we will stop completely using the old language or any kind of other languages that we used in the past, and only use the new common language, right? And what we mean by Riwaya is that we want to change how the human brain works, right? We want to make sure that they somehow gain a new memory about the common language and erase the past memory about their own language itself, right? And lastly, we believe that this common language will have the same accent without the differentiation with other races such as in the current status quo, Indian American or British American, and etc. Right? Now, towards my first argument, right? The language barrier that's happening in the status quo, right? Understand that English as our main language is the staple of the language itself, right? But understand that also not all people actually speak these languages, right? There are many people who are not bilingual in the current status quo, right? This leads to two problems. First, the people are forced to be bilingual even though they are competent to work in a company. And second of all, it leads to misinterpretation. First, let's talk about forced to be bilingual, right? People understand that now people can travel far away, right? There are many scholarships to other countries because of how easy it is, right? We believe that the existence of this language barrier will actually prevent those kind of things to be happen, right? For example, you are good at maths, but now you cannot speak English. You won't be accepted by those universities itself, right? Language doesn't mean you are smart. We believe even though you can speak 10 languages, doesn't mean that you are smart or capable in those kind of categories itself, right? And as a modern society, we believe that those kind of things must be achieved because as a modern society, we need to go abroad and etc. Right? And also understand the existence of human resources trading between each other countries, right? Where other people go to other companies and now they're outside countries, right? We believe that they are also forced to be bilingual itself, right? Not only about the universities itself. And second, let's talk about misinterpretation, right? For example, there's a tourist coming to Lombok, but he cannot speak Sasak, right? This tends to make this cause a tendency for these tourists to get scammed, right? Because they don't understand the language or anything about that place, right? We believe that this kind of misinterpretation won't happen in our side of the house because they exactly understand what the seller is trying to say without being misinterpreted and being scammed at the end of the day. And also, we believe that if the government is saying that there is Google Translate and there are private lessons that you can join, we believe that those mechanisms are very ineffective. Let's talk about private lessons, right? Not all people have the privilege to go to EF or English first, for example, right? Those kind of private lessons are very not cheap, right? We believe also that status quo is very ineffective because it is very, very complicated. And understand also, as a modern society, we are forced to be very effective. We are forced to compete in this very fast world, right? When you actually try to become a bilingual, it won't be that easy. For example, a hard language such as Arabic needs years for you to actually understand if you are a normal human being. We want to make sure our scenario will be most effective, and we believe the most effective way is by rewiring the human brain, because it will actually make it happen all of a sudden without any kind of barrier, such as the bilingual itself. Right? Talking about barriers, there are also concerns that other people need to concern. Right? For example, they need to learn about their respective jurisdiction itself, right? Not only about the bilingual stuff, right? There are many other things that they need to be considered. In our side, those kind of considerations does not exist, right? Because you only need to consider one thing, is that what do they actually need to learn in the college, not about the language barrier itself. Second urgency of the day, we believe that racism exists because language barrier also exists, right? For example, if you speak Indian, you'll say that you are stupid, or if you say that if you speak Russian, people will say that you are rude and not very polite, right? We believe that those kind of things create a false stereotype, right? We believe that not all Indian people are stupid just because they speak Indian and cannot speak American English itself, right? We want to erase those stereotypes, right? And if team opposition is afraid that diversity will be gone, we believe that there are other common things in diversity itself, for example, food, culture, and etc., right? And understand that diversity can also backlashes, right? We believe diversity is not as important as in the current status quo. We believe that raising the racism will be more important. And also, we believe that diversity doesn't exist from the very beginning. Because, for example, when you go to Jakarta as a Sasak people, you won't speak Sasak, right? You will still speak Indonesian, or you will actually assimilate to those kind of languages, right? Therefore, we believe that at the very beginning, diversity never existed itself, right? So it is better to actually avoid the old ways where we speak many languages and just do a more effective way, such as assimilating to one common language itself, right? And also talking about diversity, right? We believe that in our side of the house, diversity will be erased, because at the end of the day, no one will actually notice that you are from another culture itself, right? For example, right? We believe that when you actually speak the same language, you will actually be thought as an equal person itself, right? Even if that racism still exists, at least are reducing them step by step itself, right? Or for example, if you speak Sasak, people will think you are Kampungan itself. We believe that those kind of narrative will be very harmful towards this kind of people, because they will lose their productivity and will actually lose their confidence to actually speak towards other people. Just like what I said to you, as a modern people, we need to adapt towards other people's situation, right? We believe that the current status quo is very ineffective under their side of the house. We want to make sure that as a human being, we want to be very fast in solving every kind of problem that there is in our future itself. And for those reasons, we believe, and for this reason, we are proud to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for the fun speech. To respond to the case of the government team, I'd like to invite the leader of opposition. Time is yours.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Right. Hold it, I'm going to set up my timer first. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, before I start my arguments, I would like to give some response to the government safety pass. First of all, they state about not all people speak a common language like speak English, so it is not effective for having a common language, for having a different language in the world. But here's the thing, it is the people who actually supposed to adapt it and having adaptation with the progress of human civilization, not the language that should follow a human's brain itself. This is the way to develop our brains, by improving our linguistic skill, because language, different language, are products of the progress of human civilization. Secondly, they said about private lessons are expensive, so it needs a privilege for a certain person to learn that. They say private language lessons take a lot of amount of money, but we believe the government is way too limiting any kind of process of learning. You can learn language from everywhere. You can get free teachings from YouTube language learning apps like Duolingo, which is free. You can also learn it autodidactly from pop cultures like movies and songs. You don't always have to depend in one sector to learn language. If you are creative enough, you will find a good source to learn language. Moreover, their arguments of language courses are expensive and cannot be reached by all layers of society is irrelevant. Not all language courses are implying a high fee. You can go to several courses like IEC, for example, that previously operated here in Mataram. It is affordable. Besides schools, even schools in the current status quo, we every day since elementary school, we are obligated to learn English, which is learning the other language, right? In our status quo, we believe it is enough to live our life with variety of languages. As we live in a modern world and a modern civilization, our communication are easier already by a lot of facilities that offered by knowledge, technology, and discovery. We have Google Translate, we have English tutors, we have dictionary. Different language is no longer a problem for today. We don't see any urgency to apply a same language around the world, because even when we live in diversity, we can still communicate, especially when there's already an international language, which is English. That this already helps people around the world to communicate around the world, and nations are communicating, having diplomatic relations, and doing trade corporations and having international networks without any obstacles. Why? Because they all know there's already English as the international language, and that has been enough. We never see any problem that related to English as the international language. Even today, almost all countries are obligated their students to learn English since elementary school. People are usual with the system. Even us, and people around us are usual with learning English, for example, because international language is still acceptable in the status quo. People around the world can still communicate with that. We think that the mechanism that English as the international language is enough for the current status quo. Moving on to the arguments. First of all,
UI, please.
thank you. First of all, I'd like to explain how important is identity and diversity. Language is part of identity and part of the culture. It is intrinsic factor to be expression of cultures and customs itself. It is important because it means communicating values from our ancestor legacy, beliefs, and customs. It has important social function and encourage feelings among the group members and create solidarity. By language, traditions and customs can be preserved easily because that's the product of language communication. Language is also important as the form of transmission for natural laws, customs, and cultural norms. Language is expressing our culture, our beliefs, and influence the personal and unique identity of those who live in the culture that they preserve, and leads to creating boundaries of behavior and attitude. This identity that lives differently within the world creates diversity, which is encourage new ideas, new perspective, and experiences to make our thinkings become more critical and more open-minded. Diversity also make people can learn from each other's prominency, and different ideas and perspective leads to a better problem solving in human civilization, as it is considered many identities, so worldly considerations would be more fair. It is also creates creativity in our minds. Secondly, how important is our linguistic skill? By learning other language, it means that we're improving our linguistic skill. People who learn from other language have better linguistic skill, because when individuals pass their first language boundaries, opportunities will be open faster and can solve problem faster because they see in other language, in other ideas, and other culture. Linguistic skill affects our decision making and makes us become more rational, makes us as a better multitaskers, makes us better in analyzing text, speaking, listening, writing, and other skills that we can improve. Because switching language is a part of mental exercise, so it makes makes our brain work deeper and develop our brain cells. People with better linguistic skill also can develop their mindset more. They have flexibility, and language is the main point of learning because it demands your brain to understand other types of subjects, which makes our brain more productive. Linguistic skill is improving human resource quality. Thirdly, if we only live with one language in our brain, it will eradicate certain business and erase some jobs creation. When we only use one language, we will raising many job creation sectors like language courses, language teacher, dictionary, and textbook publishing companies, preventing technology that related to translations, erasing people's job like translators and so on. There's also people out there that are majoring in learning other language like learning ancient Egyptian, for example. If we have one language only, this will limiting our brain's process of learning that leads to the limitation of our job ideas, limiting our own economic opportunities, and limit our ideas on making new job creations and limit our economical development itself. And that's why variety of jobs and business is very important. And lastly, as we know, if we lived in a world with a language only, life would be boring because we have no difference at all. What we see every day, what we heard every day are all the same. As we live in one language, we all know that we will live in a place where there's no diversity and there is less variety of jobs. For example, you will see the stuck jobs. We will never find jobs that related to language, and this will makes our life boring, less interesting, because you heard the same language every day. It will be less interesting and less challenges every day. Just imagine if we lived in a world where there is only one language. Isn't it boring to live in a stagnant condition and uniform society? Boring can even affect our mental and our spirits and our motivation to do our task every day in our life. Brains of people are always capable and always feel boredom whenever they see or they heard or they feel the same thing over and over again for the same years, or until they die. Those who are boring will have more anxiety, more pressure that leads to depression, anger, and poor social skills, and bad grades and low work performance because they have less motivation because they are boring. And boring plays a significant role to poor mental health, which can degrading our quality of society in the current status quo. So we, as the opposition side of the house, is very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you for the fun speech. To respond to the case of the opposition team, I'd like to invite leader of Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, sorry, time is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, you sound good enough.
Okay. First, I'm sorry I can't turn on my camera because of connection issues. Is that fine?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay, cool. So, wait, let me set up my timer. Okay, and I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Members of the House, the opposition side of the House mentioned several cases, right, which I will give response to. So first, they talk about how diversity is a part of culture, and it is actually language as also the product of civilization, right? So we do think that, yeah, this is true, but we want to clarify first, as the government side of the House, that what we're talking here is that what our goal is about the practicality itself. And yes, we please differentiate between the cultural heritage and how we as the proposition actually want to achieve the goal or purpose of communication itself, right? So now, jumping to my argument, my first speaker has mentioned to you before that how we think that actually language is the main barrier for us as humans, right? We believe that language has always been the barrier for someone because of how they are obliged to master more than one language in their studies. For example, when you apply for scholarship to study abroad, there are lots of process, right, and complicated bureaucracy where you are also obliged to actually master the language of the country that you want to visit, right? And this is why we think that it is actually a problem for the person itself, because then it will make the bureaucracy and the process a lot more complicated, right? And also, why we think that having different languages around the world could be considered as difficulty for many people is because of that reason itself, ladies and gentlemen, of how it is complicating people, and of the fact how that every people actually have different capability in learning, right? Of how many people see this as a burden, for example, of how people are obliged to learn English because it is a universal language, and etc. Right? And it is also a problem because it will hamper them. It will make them stuck from achieving their goals, such as getting better education and etc. And we as a proposition want to clarify again that we are doing this for the sake of practicality, and also, yes, differentiate between the culture, heritage, and how we would be able to better and effectively achieve the goal of or purpose of communications at the end of the day under our proposal, ladies and gentlemen. And why do we regret having language barrier itself? It's because, first, like I've mentioned, people have different capability in learning new language, right? Shown by how the system and mechanism we have in status quo is not effective enough. For example, there are still lots of people who are obliged to master English as their universal language, but could not exactly do their job well at the end of the day. And even then, not everyone could, or not everyone would want to learn the language itself. For example, of how in France, they are very proud with their own language, and even when they go abroad or visit other countries, they still talk this, they still speak with foreigners using their local language, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're talking about diversity, if the opposition is addressing the matter of diversity, we want to question them of what actually is the importance of this in the matter of language itself. When we see that diversity could actually harm us, no thank you, with how it has the tendency to lead to intolerance, racism, and etc., like what my first speaker has already mentioned to you before. And also, we have what we want as the proposition is of actually how, no thank you, we want how at the end of the day we could help to ease people in communicating and then better achieve our purpose in communications itself. And if you say that it is good to uphold diversity, we think that back again of how actually diversity could be a problem because it could lead to intolerance, racism, and etc. And no, thank you. Note that there are several cases where people fight because of the difference of language itself, ladies and gentlemen. And because all this time, language seems to be like a throne to the culture itself. And this basically shows, the term of ethnocentrism. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. It's you are very proud of your culture, that you see other cultures not as good as yours. And yes, language is one of the matter that leads to this ethnocentrism itself, ladies and gentlemen. And even when we learn to master other language, there are still big possibility of many people not being able to pronounce well because they are not the native speakers, right? They are able to pronounce well, read well, and etc. And therefore could lead to misunderstanding, which shows that at the end of the day, our goal or purpose of communications is actually not achieved. And and if you want to see an example of how our proposal at the end of the day could be more effective in achieving our goal of communication, ladies and gentlemen, take an example of people with disabilities. These people, they do not speak our language, right? They do not speak the same language as us, but they do have their own language, which we know as a sign language. And this same sign language, ladies and gentlemen, it is not different from people from Indonesia or America or Australia and etc. They all use the same sign language, ladies and gentlemen. It makes them better understand each other, and you see no cases of racism or intolerance in people with disabilities, right? And that is why we are back to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for the fine speech. To respond to the case of the government team, I'd like to invite Deputy Leader Opposition. Time is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are
Yes.
audible.
Great, give me a second to set my timer. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, before moving on to my extensions, few rebuttals, actually not a few, a lot of rebuttals for team government. Firstly, they say because human beings are social people. Indeed so, because human beings are social people. If there are many languages, that is the moment we can maximize the social capability a person can have. Do not worry, I will explain this further. I would also like to protest their reasoning when they say people will be forced to be bilingual and people have different capabilities to do so. What they have not considered is this scenario. They refuse to acknowledge that despite the fact that we have an international language, our own national language is what can make us comfortable and more fulfilled. What about people who might not speak the single language well in that scenario? What about that? They do not have an alternative to be fulfilled, etc. I will explain again more of this later. And my leader of opposition has been very clear as to why it is justified to learn more than one language, but it seems that you need me to repeat it. Fine. Why it is justified? It encourages new ideas, new perspectives to our brain and maximize decision making. Language is part of mental exercise, which makes our brain work deeper and develop our brain cells. The current status quo is still acceptable because it doesn't create tangible harm. Things that you say, like people fight because of different languages, that already been tackled down in our SQ by, for example, like the help of translators as a mediation. Even in international relations, every nation speaks different languages, but they can still communicate. Look how China, US, and Iran have different language, but they still can communicate. Besides, if there's a multicultural or multinational conflicts, there's always a mediator, like the United Nations, for example. We believe racism and discrimination exist because of language barrier that they say this statement is preposterous. Black Americans and white Americans speak the exact same language. I will leave it at that statement. No, do not take language as an excuse for racism. Racism is every person's personal choice. Do not use countless languages that benefit the world as an excuse to erase racism and discrimination, to fix racism, to fix discrimination, fix the way you see the world. Their point is not valid. Before you put out arguments, please think carefully, especially when they say people fight because of the difference of language. Do they really? Is language the main instigator of conflict than government team? Incorrect. Yet again, I will explain later. First point of extension is responding to the very heart of their case, in which they say one single universal language is better for the communication and to erase misinterpretation in the world. We understand why they might say this, because in their eyes, one solution solves one problem. Having only one option leaves no room for miscommunication, correct, government team? Actually, that is terribly incorrect. Causes of miscommunication are plenty. Poor listening skills, poor speaking and delivering skills, negativity, bias between people in conversation, mental models, etc. But language barrier is none of this. It's not the main part of this. If anything, multiple languages are the vital part of human connection when it comes to interactions. If the only solution you have is that, we have proof in real life of why this will not work. Take a look at every country in the world. Inside their countries, miscommunication happen every single day. When people use offensive words, when people are lazy to explain further, when the conversation happening from a negative point to start with, the risk of miscommunication is inevitable. We don't see why having everyone speak the same language will fix this problem. Fine, that is speaking domestically, right? Let's speak internationally. In terms of national communication and national security, we see no major problems in that area when the subject in the spotlight is the language. Presidents of other countries or even people have translators, right? And that is a real job in the world. Even without that, we still have the internet, etc. The government fails to prove exactly why the language barrier specifically is the main source of the problem here. They are only disguising it that way. It is not like that, like we have explained. Miscommunication will happen even more on their side. The moment everyone speaks the same language, even the matter of national security can be easily compromised. Smaller nations will find it harder to maintain their security and integrity. It is easier for nations of the world to compromise with each other and make falsehoods out of many things. If you want to avoid miscommunication, be aware of your personal perceptual filters. Be aware of the person you are speaking to. Miscommunication's main source is, again, people who conduct the conversation. We are making people improve themselves and do not accustom themselves to take the easy way out as a simple excuse saying language is the problem when they can improve so much in their communication skill and respecting others. Second point of extension is just how important many languages are and why their statement of culture is not language is highly incorrect. Culture is composed of many things, but something we are taught since the very beginning of our lives is the important language plays in our culture. No matter how much the government may try to dismiss the importance of this idea, it cannot be so. Further evaluation, look at Africa. Nations and cultures in Africa, they are so similar to each other, but the main thing that separates them, makes them feel individual, unique, valid, and provides a solid identity is their language. The moment you take away the colorfulness that language brings to the world, you will have a world that is dull of culture. Look at Indonesia. So much pride in the languages that we have. No, thank you. It is the most prized thing we solidify to the world, in that we can say we are a country rich in culture. From all corners of the world, Belarus and Russia, for example, too. I don't think the government understands just how much they are also limiting human capacity. Humans have a brain capacity for 500 encyclopedias. We are wired for so much more. The brain is remarkable. Language is an essential component of how the brain functions throughout life. But just like the brain itself, science still doesn't have a full picture of everything in the world. That is where multiple languages can come in. The presence of countless languages is in the world can help people find their own identity as a person. Linguistic skills is improving human resources quality. One language is not only limiting human capability, but the capability for them to find and settle into themselves. I am Indonesian, but I feel more complete and solid as a person when I am also able to speak English. When I have the capacity, the capability to speak more than one language, I am open to the world. I am open to realize that how vast and diverse our world is. It makes us appreciate the diversity so much more. Third point is comparison and what benefit is exclusive to us. What is an aspect that we never see in government speech? They never fully delve into what they are erasing here. Not only limiting culture and diversity, but education and economy and job fields as well. Why do we not see it in their speech? The study of language, linguistics. The reason we have history is when people study the languages of the past, and that is why history is never completed to study. If you only have one language, that job field does not exist. The study of history will be finished because everything is very simply understood. People who are not capable scientifically or are intelligent enough to pursue any job fields, they can make a living just by translating their language and teaching their language, or etc. to others. In so many important aspects, language brings joy and color to the world. Even when miscommunication and misinterpretations happen, that moves us to learn more, to push our capacity more, to appreciate more. Because life is not only minimalizing misinterpretations, like they say. Life is also when you feel happy to communicate with the unique language of yours, when you can look at your country and fully see how they are different from others. For you to have something so significant that makes you a diverse being. For nations that do not have high GDP or economic capability, sometimes the significant differences they have in their language is what is the main source of their country's income, like the Xhosa country in Africa. The point is their goal of practicality and erasing misinterpretation. What is their reasoning for this? The only thing that they have stated over and over is because they want to achieve practicality, because people have different capabilities to learn. Exactly for that reason, we want many languages so they can expand their capabilities, so they can have alternatives when they fail to fully maximize their capability in only one thing. So instead of finding excuses that language is what causes miscommunication, is what causes discrimination, is what causes the limitation of capability, do not use that as a simple excuse, and instead analyze the case even further. What you need to evaluate is your worst case scenario and how you respond to that, which is why we as the opposition proudly oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for the fine speech. To conclude the case of the government team, I'd like to invite member of the government. Time is yours.
My third is preparing his setup.
Sorry?
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm ready now. Am I audible? Stopwatch. Wait, I'm gonna prepare my stopwatch. May I start?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So to respond to the first case of the governments of the oppositions of the House, first of all, she stated that language is human civilization product. Human civil product isn't the only, but the thing is, human civil product isn't the only one. Now we are in the modern society. We are have like a technology, like a culture or something like that, and language is not the only one, because language like here is a barrier. It's not only a diversity that we need. That I will explain it later again in my rebuttals. And then the second one is I need you to I want to explain to you that how fast a technology can be developed. For example, like the advance of technology, like Indonesia, we are far more than France or Germany about our affiliation or about our aviation things. That's what we need to keep up, because we are in the modern society. They could get away from us very very fast if if we are not able to compete and just overcome with that situation. And that's why we need the most effectivity way to overcome that thing, because our goal is now, like, both sides agrees that we are in the modern society situation, means that we need to be able to compete and just limit the gap between them. The biggest gap that we have right here is the language barrier itself. When people need to learn that kind of language, it may take time. For example, you need to learn for 1 year, and 1 year you're not even like a native speaker. You still have miscommunication or something like that. You don't understand every word that they say. That's what will be happen now. Thank you. Then the next one is the government said that there is a process of learning that can be achieved and they could do it from like Google Translator or something like that. But the fact is, they doesn't ever see the society interest or the society willingness, because there is some people who are very interested in language, or there is some people who just very smart at science, or who just very smart at science, chemistry, etc. But they don't even know how to speak English because they have no interest in language, even though the platform is already
Even you agree that we are in a modern society situation. So wouldn't it actually be easier now for people to have access to learn all languages in the world, considering the benefit?
Okay. So I'm going to give you the question about that POI. So here it is. You said that people it's easy to learn another language, but the thing is, there is still 50% of people who can be able to speak English in Asian. And even though they are considered as be able to speak English, but their accent and also their accent and also their capability to understand every word that the native speaker said is not the same like the others. For example, like what I speak, my speech, I can guarantee that you don't understand every word in my speech, because we are not native speaker. We're just speaking as we can. That's what the barrier that's been happening right here, and that's why we say that it's not gonna be that easy for you to learn a new language. If you say that it's easy to learn a new language, there's if you say that it's easy to learn a new language. For example, like a lot of language is very hard to be learned. For example, like Arabic, Russian, or even Indian English that just have been vanished because it is very hard to learn. So we don't want you to we don't want, because I want to make sure that they are overgeneralized. It's very easy to learn language, because it's not easy at all to learn language. The next one is about the identity and diversity. Okay, diversity. People change when their environment change. For example, when me visit Java, I'm going to change my behavior, my accent or something like that. People are going to be changed. That's what diversity makes. Diversity just makes you change. But if you say diversity is colorful, we agree. But in the context of language, are you really proud of diversity, or just your ego to use your own language? Because this is the point of ethnocentrism. When a tribe are very proud to use their language. For example, when I went to Java, they are speak Japanese. Even our first language is Indonesian, ladies and gentlemen, but they are just speak Japanese, and they're proud about that, and they're happy with that. They don't even care about that first language meaningful of Indonesian language. They still use Japanese. That's what the difference here that still be happening here. It is only in Indonesia. What about the other country? For example, like in German and France, they are still uphold the principle that they need to speak German and French and know English. That's going to be a very very barrier for you to learn and understand their culture, or take knowledge about that. And then the first speaker of the opposition kind of assumptive about the point of being boring. Okay, if you say that you're going to be boring to speak one language, okay, you just speak Indonesian from you were born, and you still enjoy to speak Indonesian. That's not going to be very very counted. And also you don't because they are assumptive about that boring thing. And if you say that it's going to be not colorful as much, you still have culture, you still have social behavior, you still have culture shock when you are visit another area. So it's mean that you only use one common language doesn't kill the diversity at all. You still have that kind. But the thing is, we want to erase the barrier that exists in our society life, like right now. And no, thank you. And the next one is about the new perspective and the idea that could be happen. And also, the second speaker just states that racism is an every person personal decision. But the thing is, it depends on your lifestyle, environment, and media, because no one want to voice their racism. But the thing is, this language could be a platform of racism. For example, when you have Indian accent, they're going to laughing at you because it is very, very Indian. Or you have Russian accent, they're going to say that you are you are just like a gangster or something like that. That is the kind of that is what I say, the kind of racism that been exists. And furthermore, I want to extend about the point of people that need to learn or understand about need to learn or understand about the new language. The thing is, the ability people to understand the new word or the new language is depend on their ages or their performance in understanding linguistics. So we cannot force people to do like that. Moreover, remember, we want to achieve a good effectivity in this case, because we are in the modern society. We need to keep keep up with them. The next one is they are kind of dismissive about the social judgment, like the accent or something like that itself. And also, if you say that they're going to lose some translator job, but you, the second and the first, say that it's easy to learn language. So just told the translator to learn sign language, like, because sign language is the universal language. Oh yeah. Also, if you want to have an example about a common language, you could use the definition of the sign language. Okay, sign language. Wherever you are, you only have one sign language. If you don't be able to speak, you only need to learn one sign language, and you could be understand every word wherever you are. So that's what will be happen if we use this common language scenario. And the other benefit is we will easy to transfer knowledge and the technology transfer. It's going to be easier, and it's going to be very, very good for the development of human resource or the innovation things. Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you for the fine speech. To conclude the case of the opposition, I'd like to invite the member of opposition, Mr.
Wait a minute, Kak. My laptop is gonna turn off, so I'm going to charge it first. Is it okay?
Sorry? Can you repeat again? What did you say?
Yeah, it's okay.
Can I confirm, has this been finished? Hi everyone, can somebody confirm whether this room is finished or not? Is finished or not?
No, it's just third speaker of opposition. We still have third speaker opposition and reply speaker for both team.
Okay, Kak, I'm sorry. It's taking a long time, so I'm ready now.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to. I prefer POI through mic. So if you just want to POI, just open your mic. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So before I jump to my arguments, I'm going to give lots of regards to the government side of the house. So first is that they mentioned about when you apply scholarship to study abroad and exchange, you have to learn the local language and being more complicated. Exactly, that's the main point and the main purpose of student exchange. You are demanded to learn locals language so that you can explore other culture. Learning from other culture and opens up your mind. Just imagine if you are applying student exchange in your world where the language is only one. Once you go to the other country that you are seek, you will find people that speak same language like you, where like you seek for the new experience and new culture in your world when you go abroad. Every countries abroad that you will visit will feel less interesting because they all typically speaks the same words and phrase like your own country. So, and the second one that they mentioned is that people have different capability in learning language. Just because certain people have the lack capability in learning, that it is not justified and not fair to force the whole heads around the world to use the same language. Millions heads out there has change and equal opportunities to learn new ideas, new language. Human brain's capability actually can be developed. When they practice more, they can improve. Not it depends on yourself whether you want to do the efforts to develop your brains or not.
POI, please.
Other things, no, thank you. They say that language is not the only one culture, but language is the main point of culture. Language is a core intrinsic points that constructs culture. Without language, you cannot make culture. Without language as identity, you cannot create traditional dances or traditional ceremony. Another thing that they said is not all people can speak English. That's why this is good to motivate people to learn more and more, because if we use our brain more often, if we learn more, it develops our brain cells. And another thing that they say is that opposition says it's easy to learn English. We never say so. We said there's a lot of opportunity out there to access the learning of other language. It is just us, the people that are way too lazy to find and to learn. And they also mentioned about we cannot speak like native. Of course you cannot, because that's not your first language. But
Ma'am,
just
POI,
think
please.
what Western people, not that you actually really respect for a foreigner, even though their accents are ridiculous. They tend to understand because they understand these foreigners are not using their first language. And another thing that they say is that life will boring because we live in one language. It's really assumptive. That's the bare minimum, and that's a basic nature of human. When they hear this same thing over and over again, they will be sick of that and bored and need refreshments of ideas. And also, last but not least, they mention about people fight because of different language. Let's be realistic. Whether you have different language or same language, both of them have still a possibility to trigger fights and misunderstanding, because that's unavoidable. Besides, that's already been tackled down in our status quo by, for example, like the help of translators as the mediations. Even in international relations, every nation speaks different language, but they still can communicate. Look how China, US, and Iran have different language, but they still can communicate. Besides, if there's a multicultural or multi-nations conflicts, there's always a mediator like United Nations for a mediation. For example, jump to my arguments. One question for this debate. Why is it not urgent to rewind the human brain to only speak one language? Up until right now, language doesn't give us any disadvantage, ladies and gentlemen. The language gives us the opportunity to study, and because of the existence of language, jobs fields are getting bigger. And we can avoid that as that important things. So it means that it reduces unemployment because of the existence of so many language. People can work as a translator, teacher, or even a guide for tourists around the world. And if we rewire the human brain, where are those people gonna work? What are they gonna do? Rather than solving problem, you are only gaining more and more problems. What are the problems? First, unemployment people are increasing. As I said before, language open up a bigger job field. But if we rewire the human's brain, it means those people are not going to do anything. Those people are going to be jobless, and eventually it's going to be a bad impact not only for themselves but also our country. The human resources standards will decrease. Second, is that erasing country identity. Let me just give you a simple example: Russia and Belarus. Many people think that they are in this at the same country, but the fact that they are really different. One of the point that making them different is that their language, what their language they speak. Both of them have their own official language. Third is that limiting the capability of humans. This has already been explained very clearly by my second speaker, but I'm just gonna say it anyway so that it will clear. As we know, every human has different ability, and that's what's making them special. There are some people that good in learning language, and there are also some people that good at calculate. And if we only have one language, what will happen to those people? Government, what will happen to those people that is good at language? We just let them just like that. That will be very unfair to them, right? Because it really disadvantaging them. Ladies and gentlemen, government side is very, very confident saying that their side is really effective. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, effective means that it's going to be successful where no one's being disadvantaged. But their arguments really, really disadvantage not only the people who works in the language field, but also the people that are good at language. They didn't even give us any solution for those people. So what now? We just let them be disadvantaged just like that. Ladies and gentlemen, the government cannot guarantee that if we speak one language, that people won't fight. They mentioned about people fighting because of the difference of language, but will they even solve any problem? Many people using the same language often have a fight, and like I already said in the first place, it's unavoidable. They cannot, the government side, they cannot even guarantee you anything. They never fully delve into what they are erasing here, not only limiting culture and diversity, but education and economy in job fields. Why do we see it in their speech? This is a question that you should consider, panel. So if you want the best thing, if you want to prevent those bad things to happen, please vote for the opposition side. And that's why I'm really proud to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for the fine speech. To close the case of opposition, I'd like to invite the reply. Time is yours. Reply speaker of opposition, time is yours.
Okay. I'm going. To panels, notice how this debate has been going on. What is an aspect we never see in government's first speech? They've never really full delve into what they are erasing here, not only limiting culture and diversity, but education and economy in job fields. They also doesn't give you a mechanism on how protecting each country's national security, which actually could harm the circumstances. It is kind of confusing when team proposition use the idea of people have different capability in learning language as a justification to imply a same language to every head around the world. Just because certain people have like capability in learning, then it's not justified and not fair to force the whole heads around the world to use the same language. Millions heads out there has chance and equal opportunity to learn new ideas and new language. Human brain capability actually can be developed when they practice more. They can improve. Now it really depends on yourself whether you want to do the effort to develop your brain or not. And also they keep denying the fact that language is part of the culture. They repetitively say language is not the only culture, but panels, language is the main point of culture. Just like my whip has explained to you, language is a core intrinsic point that constructs culture. Without language, you cannot make cultures, you cannot make traditional dances or traditional ceremony. They also keep worrying about not all people can speak English, but panels. That's why this is good to motivate people to learn more and more, because if we use our brain more often, if we learn more, it will develop our brain cells. It improves our quality. They also deny the fact that life will be boring if we live in one language. But ladies and gentlemen, that's the bare minimum, and that's a basic nature of human. When they hear the same thing over and over again, they will be sick of that and bored and need refreshment of ideas. And also, their argument of people with a fight because of different language is also not strong. My whip already tackled it down by saying, let's be realistic, whether you have different language or same language, both of them still have possibility to trigger fights and misunderstanding, because that's unavoidable. Besides, that already been tackled down in our status quo by, for example, like the help of translators or the mediation. Even in international relations, you have mediator like United Nations, right? So nations, even when the miscommunication and misinterpretations happen, that moves us to learn more, to push our capacity more, to appreciate more, because life is not only about minimalizing misinterpretations like their certain house said. Life is also when you feel happy to communicate with a unique language that is yours, for you to have something so significant that makes you a diverse being. For nations that do not have a high GDP or economic capability, sometimes the significant difference they have, that is their language, is what is the main source of the country's income. The second and third speaker of government made it very clear in the speech that she says, when you remove language, the risk of racism and discrimination will be erased. But they have not responded effectively when we say that racism and discrimination is not dependent on that. And we provided proof with Black and white Americans. What example did they give us? 0 panels. We have never generalized that learning language is easy, but just because it is not that easy doesn't mean we need to strip it from its existence. Team proposition is the one who actually makes the diversity of language become such a problematic in the current status quo, while we already elaborated clearly to you in our status quo that it is very enough, especially when we live in a progressive and very modern society. So we as the opposition is very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Close the case of the government. I'd like to invite the reply speaker. Time is yours.
I'm sorry. Wait. Well, am I clear?
Yes, you sound good enough.
Oh, thank you. Okay, then I'm just setting up my timer. Sorry for the wait. May I begin?
Sure, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Beginning my speech in 3, 2, 1. Member of the House, we clearly see that opposition is very dismissive on our case, right? First, let's analyze all of them, right? Which is so many. First of all, on the idea of effectivity, right? They always try to generalize that people have the same learning capabilities, right? Even if somehow and then they started to respond that even if they don't have the same capabilities, it is therefore because of becoming lazy, right? But they don't understand how can they become lazy. They become lazy because they have no willingness to do that. But now they are forced to do that because of how this modern world works, where you are so interconnected between every countries in the whole wide world, right? That's also what team opposition haven't never responded itself, right? On how the modern world is demanding us to be as quick, right? We already told you that their proposal is not effective because on how fast this world is moving. The moment you stop, the moment you are left behind by the whole wide world, ladies and gentlemen. And then they are also dismissive on our idea of accent, right? They never engage on our idea of accent, right? Even though they said this diversity the diversity is okay and in many forms, but at least we want to minimize the tendency of this diversity to begin with. But also they try to backlash with themselves, right? When they say the diversity, the diversity is also the one who makes it colorful, right? We already explained to you that diversity also doesn't exist from the very first place, right? Because the moment, for example, Sasak people go to Jakarta, they don't speak Sasak because they are afraid of that, right? We believe so at the end of the day, the diversity doesn't exist itself because they are afraid of being racist itself, right? Or in other words, ethnocentrism itself, ladies and gentlemen. And now, and then also the backlash when they stated when it's easy for everybody to learn language, right? But at the same time, they also bring the idea of translators. We say the existence of translators. Does if there is translator, then why do you, if you can learn language, then why do you need translators itself, ladies and gentlemen? That doesn't make sense, right? And then also they are too positive that they're saying if you work hard enough, you can learn many languages. They don't understand how hard it is to how hard is it to learn Arabic in our school, right? Well, it is very hard, ladies and gentlemen. You need to understand us. And then also, they never clearly stated what is the benefit of language, right? They also stated you won't be bored. It will encourage learning, right? Let's talk about being bored, right? I never see someone said, "Oh, I'm bored learning Indonesian." It's up, ladies and gentlemen. Those kind of things never existed in the status quo, just like what my third already mentioned, right? And also learning. We already told you that language isn't the only media for you to be learning itself, ladies and gentlemen. You can learn without even you can still learn even though you don't have you are not bilingual itself, right? We already told you that the reason people go to student exchange and that they have to learn that language is a barrier for them, right? They can be capable, but now they are seen as incapable because they can't learn language, but they are smart in maths, for example, right? We believe that those kind of things have never been tackled down by team opposition itself. And then talking about cultural behavior, we already told you the cultural behavior is not only about the language itself, right? They're also about behaviors on how you act on the dining table itself, right? We believe that those kind of things have never been engaged by side opposition itself, right? And then we haven't seen any clear stance from team opposition itself, right? We don't know what kind of world do they really want, right? We already told you what kind of world we want, right? We want a world where people have the same language, so they have the easier way to communicate and less misconception itself, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that we already told you why those kind of things is very important, because on how you can now travel, for example, to America in just for a few hours itself, right? Without transit or something like that, right? This shows to you that the world is very interconnected, right? One of the barriers of us unifying this world is the language itself, right? As a modern society, we want to make sure that we can actually be the modern society that we really wanted, which is that we can communicate to all of the people with the whole wide world easily. And for those reasons, we believe that Mac deserves to be in the finals. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much for giving a very outstanding speech. This is the end of the semi-final. I think that all of you accept